This book hit differently. I read it on Kindle and I've just received my physical copy, and I can't wait to reread it and highlight the whole book, basically. I'm not sure if it was the timing of reading it, or the way it was written, or the examples it gives, but something about this book really got to me. Maybe some of the ideas in this book won't be new to you, but I'm pretty sure that you'll still find something valuable to take away from this book, if not more than one thing. At its core, The Mountain Is You is about how we get in our own way. It talks about self-sabotage in a very practical, oh wow, that's literally me kind of way. You know that feeling when you know exactly what you should be doing, but you just don't do it? Yep. We have the knowledge, but actually doing something with it, that's a whole different story. And that's what this book is about. It breaks down the habits, fears, the subconscious beliefs that keep us stuck, and teaches us how to rewire our mindset so we can finally move forward. So I have my notes here, and I'm going to share with you 5 lessons that I've learned from this book. I've learned so much more, but I don't want this video to be super long, and I have a feeling that it's going to be anyway. So I'll try to stick to 5 lessons. So lesson 1, the mountain is you. The book opens with this line: there is nothing holding you back in life more than yourself. Now, we've all heard different versions of this. We are our worst enemy and such. But something about the way it's phrased here is just amazing. It's not trying to be a motivational quote or a deep philosophical statement. It's just a straight up fact. You are holding yourself back more than anything else. And that's just sad. If we are the ones holding ourselves back, do we ever truly want change? Or do we only want the idea of it? Then the book mentions Carl Jung, who is a huge deal in psychology. And by the way, the guy who came up with the concepts of introvert and extrovert personalities. Although he meant something slightly different than what we mean by it today, but never mind. So when Jung was young, but that's not even funny. Anyway, so when Jung was a child, he fell at school and hit his head. And at that moment, he realized that getting injured meant he could skip school. And he was miserable at school, so that was good news. After that, he started experiencing uncontrollable fainting spells. But here's the thing. There was nothing physically wrong with him. Later in life, he realized that his mind decided that fainting was his way out of uncomfortable situations, and his body just went along with it. Oliver. Bon? כן, יופי. שלום. שלום. I love you. Oh, choo choo. Oh, choo choo, choo choo, choo choo. Okay. Now that story really stuck with me because I've had so many unexplained headaches in weird situations. No matter how many tests I've done, nothing is physically wrong, but the headaches are brutal. And it's not just during stressful moments. It happens on vacations, in fun situations where I should feel great. And that brings me to the part of the book that quite shocked me. We are not designed to be happy.
Wait. What?
So yeah, we know that as humans we are wired to avoid pain and discomfort, but who would have thought? I never considered that even happiness can be uncomfortable. That was a huge aha moment for me. Wiest calls this the upper limit, and she explains it like this. When you begin to surpass your upper limit, you start to unconsciously sabotage what's happening in order to bring yourself back to what's comfortable and familiar. For some people, this manifests physically, often as aches, pains, headaches, or physical tension. For others, it manifests emotionally as resistance, anger, guilt, or fear. It might seem totally counterintuitive, but we are not really wired to be happy. We are wired to be comfortable. Did you find it shocking, or is it just me? Lesson 2. What you think you want versus what you actually need. Have you ever caught yourself making the same mistake over and over and wondering, why do I keep doing this to myself? Well, it turns out that a lot of our self-sabotage behaviors are not random at all. They're actually driven by something called subconscious commitments, which are things that we want so badly we don't even realize we're chasing them. For example, if deep down you are committed to feeling free, you might unknowingly push away stable job opportunities because they feel too restricting. Or if your biggest subconscious commitment is to feel wanted, you might find yourself drawn to intense but non-committal relationships because deep down you're afraid that once the spark fades, so will the love. And here's the inconvenient truth. That thing we're chasing is not even what we actually need. Our core need is usually the opposite of our subconscious commitment. So let's say you always feel the need to be in control. What you really need is trust. Trusting that things will work out even when you're not micromanaging them. If you crave being needed by others, what you truly need is to feel wanted for who you are, not just what you do for people. Or if you're like me and you constantly seek love from others, your biggest need is self-love. Now the thing is, the less we fulfill our core needs, the more we act in weird self-sabotaging ways, maybe through unhealthy eating patterns, isolating ourselves, or overworking. But the good news is that once we start feeding our actual needs, the self-sabotage starts to fade. Lesson 3. Self-sabotage feels like comfort. One of the hardest lessons in this book is realizing that self-sabotage doesn't always look destructive. Sometimes it feels like the safest, most logical thing to do. Staying in your comfort zone, overthinking instead of taking action, telling yourself you'll start tomorrow instead of starting now, avoiding risks because there's no chance it would ever work out, and the list goes on and on. Does that sound familiar? Because for me, it's a typical Wednesday. Apparently, our brains are wired for survival, not success. So when we start making big changes, our minds panic. That's why we unconsciously resist the very things that could help us grow. So self-sabotage takes many forms, and there are so many ways we unknowingly get in our own way that are present in the book. I'll share just a few of the ones that resonate most with me, and maybe you'll recognize them in yourself too. The key here is really to raise our self-awareness and identify these patterns, because once we do that, then we can start break free from them. So the first I'm going to share with you is uprooting, or the way I call it, the art of starting over and over and over. I'm sure you'll relate to this one. Uprooting is when we jump from one thing to another instead of just following through. It's that impulse to scrap everything and start fresh, whether it's a project, a routine, or even a relationship. We buy a new notebook, set up a fresh calendar, and it's because it feels like progress. But really, we're just avoiding the hard part, the part where we just have to commit and grow. For me, this shows up in wanting to constantly rebrand my work, tweaking my systems instead of just using them, or shifting my focus when things get tough. The truth is, yeah, I love beginnings, the excitement, the possibilities. But real success comes from what happens after the excitement fades. And I need to sit with this discomfort instead of running from it. Another form of self-sabotage is perfectionism, or the way I call it, the sneakiest excuse. I need to breathe for this because this was just... I used to think that perfectionism was a good thing. Like, oh, I just want to do my best. And I needed to hear this, that perfectionism is not about high standards. It's about fear. If something has to be perfect, then I have the perfect excuse not to finish it, not to share it, not to risk failing. Every time I delay a project because it's not ready, or overthink a video or a blog post to the point of scrapping it entirely, that's perfectionism keeping me stuck. And the irony is that the only way to actually get good at something is to do it badly first. I need to stop aiming for perfect and start aiming for done. I remember back in uni we used to say that a good paper is a done paper. I can always refine and develop it later if I want or if I'm able to, but if I don't start, I'll never get anywhere. Disorganization, or the way I call it, a convenient mess. I always assumed that my messiness was just part of who I am, a little ADHD chaos. But Wiest makes a point. Sometimes we create messes on purpose, not consciously, but as a way to avoid the real work. When my space is a disaster, my schedule is chaotic, my to-do list is overwhelming, my ADHD symptoms are up the roof, and I always have an excuse. Oh, I can't really focus right now, I just need to clean up first. And suddenly hours pass and I haven't even touched the actual task I needed to do. I never realized that deep down I might be avoiding that moment of clarity, because think about it, once everything is in order, there are no more distractions and it's just me and the work I've been avoiding. The next one is guilt of succeeding, or the way I call it, who am I to have more? This one is subtle but real. Success comes with guilt, because in a world where so many people suffer, who am I to have more? More money, more freedom, more happiness. So what do? We shrink ourselves so others feel comfortable. I always downplay my achievements because I don't want to seem too much or too proud. But that doesn't stay on the surface level and only comes out in front of people. That leaks into my belief system. So whenever I reach a certain goal I've had, I dismiss it like it was nothing, although I probably worked really hard to get there. And it also doesn't feel as great as I expected it to be. It's easy to feel like succeeding means leaving people behind, or that I don't deserve good things. But Wiest points out that this guilt is another form of self-sabotage. Instead of brushing off a compliment, I can say, thank you, I worked really hard and I'm happy to be here. Ooh, my legs. Because keeping ourselves small doesn't help anyone. And instead, I can look at success as a tool that allows me to support even more people and create positive change. Last but not least, being busy, or the way I call it, the ultimate distraction. Being busy feels productive, but Wiest points out that many people stay busy just to avoid facing themselves. When I fill my schedule with endless tasks and make everything urgent, it keeps me from asking myself the real questions. Am I working on the right things? Am I moving in the direction I actually want to? Because let's be honest, if I really wanted to, I could make time for what matters. But by making everything important? Nothing actually is. Her advice is to prioritize no more than 5 essential tasks a day, to outsource what can be outsourced, and to let go of all the rest. And that's easier said than done, but we need to act differently if we want things to be different. Most importantly, she wants us to reflect and ask ourselves, what does being busy give me? Does it make me feel more important? Does it give me an excuse to say no to plans or to avoid certain people? Because at the end of the day, being busy, it's not the same as being fulfilled. And it would be easier for us to work with ourselves once we know what's going on. Lesson 4. Change requires emotional regulation. One of the biggest reasons we struggle to change is not just because we need new habits. It's because we need to find new ways to handle our emotions. For example, I'm used to procrastinating when I'm overwhelmed. And breaking that habit is not just about better time management. It's about learning to sit with this discomfort instead of avoiding it, and learning to understand myself better, my triggers, and not to fight myself, because that would make me feel even more overwhelmed. So basically, we need to be aware that change can be very difficult sometimes, and every major change requires us to become emotionally stronger. Whether it's facing rejections instead of avoiding risks, pushing through boredom instead of quitting, or tolerating uncertainty instead of constantly seeking reassurance. Lesson 5. Figuring out if we self-sabotage. Again, I'll share the things that stood out to me personally, because otherwise this video would be even longer than it already is. So I wrote the list here. The first one is you avoid dealing with uncomfortable truths. Maybe you don't know how much debt you have or what your work actually worth. For me, I shut down during conflicts instead of addressing them. And I need to remember that avoidance doesn't make problems disappear. It just makes them harder to fix. The second one is you care more about looking happy than actually being happy. I put so much effort into making things look good instead of making them feel good. And it's hard not to, because we live in a society where posting pictures of a fun night matters more than actually enjoying it. And for me, it's not only on social media, it's also in every social encounter that I have. I put on this happy, cheerful face, and I try really hard to make everything looks easy and comfortable, instead of stop worrying about how it looks and actually be present and enjoy the moment. The next one is you prioritize being liked over being happy. That actually connects to the previous one. I constantly make decisions based on what others will approve of. Ken. Oh. You're afraid of your own emotions. Have you watched The Vampire Diaries? If so, let me know which team are you on. They have this ability to turn off their emotions, and I used to find myself quite often wishing I was able to do that too.
Turn it off. What? Just turn it off. And everything will go away.
Because for me, it's one of the scariest things to be overflooded with emotions. The next one is you chase your goals without asking yourself why. If I'm ticking off every box but still feeling empty, I might be following someone else's definition of success instead of my own. You treat your coping mechanisms as the enemy instead of understanding them. For example, I mentioned this earlier in this video that I beat myself up for procrastinating. But this behavior is probably feeling an emotional need, and until I address the why, I'm doomed to fight the same battle. You believe your doubts more than your potential. Our brain is wired to focus on the negative, and it gives the negative much more weight in our minds. But we need to remember that that doesn't mean that our fears are more real than our strengths. You're trying to do everything. Willpower is limited, so we need to use it wisely. And instead of spreading ourselves too thin, we need to focus on what really matters and let the rest go. You don't give yourself enough credit. If I look back to 5 years ago, I can see how much I've grown. I can see how many things I overcome that I never thought I would. We're further along than we think, but we often don't think that about ourselves. So, did I stop self-sabotage? Not yet. But there are so many strategies in this book that I'm excited to try. I definitely need to look inward, take more action, and shift my focus. As I heard somewhere, there are 2 wolves in the forest, one good, one bad. Which one survives? The one you feed more. So yeah, I'm looking forward to feeding the good one, and perhaps looking at success, happiness, or fulfillment less as something that I need to earn and more as something that I need to learn to accept. The mountain in our way is us, our fears, our limiting beliefs, our doubts. But the good news is that we are also the solution. And instead of fighting against ourselves, we need to work with ourselves and go with the flow. And like in a vortex, the only way out is by surrendering to it. And as always, I'm so curious to hear what you think. Perhaps let me know, what would you want to do if nothing external were holding you back? No obligations or limitations. You have all the money and time in the world. What would you want to do differently in your life? Let me know what you think about everything mentioned. And also if you see yourself getting in your own way, or perhaps you're completely perfect at it, so maybe you can share your secrets to overcome it. Ooh, I wanted to ask you, I saw another YouTuber doing that. She asked the viewers to leave a certain emoji to let her know that they reached a certain point in the video. And I thought that would be such a nice way to connect with all of you, because I know there are many of you that don't like to leave comments, and I love you, don't worry about it at all. But I thought it's such a nice way that if you leave an emoji, let's agree on any type of flower. So if you leave an emoji of a flower in the comment section, I'll know that you watched this video till the end. Hopefully you liked it, and I'll feel more connected to you. And with that, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye.